Thank you, Mr. Chair. You are now live.
Thank you very much. Welcome, everyone, to tonight's meeting of the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council. This is Thursday, the 3rd day of June, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and let's do a quick roll call to see who's present. Who's from District 3?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm pleased to be here this evening, and I look forward to good work.
District 4.
That's me. Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Feels like it's been such a long time since I've seen your faces. So happy to be here and looking forward to our package B tonight.
District 5.
I'm here, Mr. Chair, ready to go.
Thank you. And lastly, the Have Fanatic, District 6.
You know, Mr. Chair, for some reason I have a little more spring in my step the last number of days, but good to see everybody. Good evening.
Good evening, and hope you enjoy the Bruins game tonight. If we get to it, how long this meeting goes. Anyway, also we have staff. Simon, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Simon Rossigal, and I'm the legislative assistant for the meeting of June 3rd, 2021, Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council.
Okay, and let me see who we have. Our solicitor present.
Josh Judah, here's the solicitor.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Who are the principal planners with us tonight?
Good evening, Community Council. Maggie Holm here is one of the principal planners this evening.
Hello, thank you. Who else we have from the planning staff tonight? Jump on in.
Hi, Mr. Chair, Jamie Ellen Planovic here. I am a planner on the Urban Enabled Applications team.
Thank you, Jamie Ellen. Thank you. Who else we have present?
Yeah, hello, Mr. Chair. Ben Sivak, Community Policy Program Manager. Looking forward to presenting Package B. And if you want more introductions, I just know we have a couple of my team here, Dali Sala and Ross Grant, who might want to introduce themselves.
Yes, please.
Help with any questions, yeah.
Yes, please. Have them introduce.
Oh, Dali, you're on mute.
Apologies. Hi, everyone. My name is Dali Saleh. I'm part of the Center Plan team. I'm a planner on the team, and I'm here to help Ben if there are any specific questions.
Hi, Dali. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Ross Grant, also with Planning and Development from the Center Plan team.
Welcome. Thank you, Ross. Anyone else from the municipal planning staff present tonight?
Might be easier to say who's not here from the planning staff.
Yes, possibly. All right, that's it for introductions. Next on the agenda will be the approval of minutes of our meeting of May 6th and 20th. May I have a motion, please, to accept the minutes of May 6th and 20th, 2021?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by
Councillor Purdy.
Councillor Purdy. Are there any questions on the minutes before I call for the question on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the minutes say aye.
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 Motion carried. The order of business, are there any deletions or additions to the agenda tonight, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've received no requests through the clerk's office for additions or deletions.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve the agenda as circulated?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Purdy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We have no business arising in the minutes. So we have any declarations of conflict tonight from anyone? Any conflict of interest? Hearing none, move forward. No motions of reconsideration, no rescissions, no consideration deferred business. We have no table matter matters to deal with today. No hearing tonight. We have any correspondence, Mr. Clerk, that may have been circulated?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there was one piece of correspondence that was circulated to all members of Community Council, and that relates to item 13.1.2.
Thank you very much. Does any members of council have petitions to present? No petitions. No presentations requested tonight. No information on to be brought forward. So we'll get into the heart of the agenda. We have before us agenda item 13.1.1, case number 22797, rezoning and development agreement for 95 Caledonia Road in Dartmouth. Staff, please come forward to make a presentation on that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the clerk's office is going to run the presentation. This is Jamie Ellen Klenovic speaking.
Thank you.
So just while we're waiting for the presentation to come up, just a reminder that we had a public hearing on this matter at the meeting on May 6th, and council voted to approve the request for rezoning this property at 95 Caledonia Road. Can I have slide 2, please? So now that rezoning is in effect, we're moving on to item number 2 on this slide. We're looking for a decision on whether council would like to enter into a development agreement to allow a new 5-story apartment building with ground floor commercial uses at this location. It's located at 95 Caledonia Road, so that's the intersection of Caledonia Road and Kennedy Drive. The applicant in this case is WM Ferris Architects. Can I have the next slide, please? So this is the location here. Just out on the left and a little bit closer on the right. So the site is close to an HRM park to the west, and also close to Beasley Fields and Caledonia Road Junior High to the south. Next slide, please. This is the site as it currently exists. It's a single-story commercial plaza. This is standing on the sidewalk adjacent to Caledonia Road, and the small building currently on the side to the left in this photo, and you can see the existing multi-unit dwellings close to the site in the background. Next slide. And this is the view from standing in the HRM park. That's to the west of the site, and that's looking up toward the existing building, and the playground is toward the right in this photo. Next slide. So this is the proposed elevation from Caledonia Road. The building is 5 stories. Next slide. This is what it would look like from Kennedy Drive. You can see the entrance to the parking facility there from Kennedy Drive. It's not underground parking, but it is covered parking. Next slide. And from the park, the internal lot line facing the HRM park. Next slide. And here is the internal lot line to the south. Next slide. This is the site plan. So you can see there's going to be a small amount of surface parking on the south of the lot. And there's a reasonably healthy setback from the street line. My understanding is the proposal is that the commercial uses are going to be on the southern end of the ground floor, so on the right of this photo. And then the remainder of the ground floor would be amenity space for residents. Next slide. So after the last meeting, the site is currently zone C2, which is the general business zone. We didn't change the designation, so it's still commercially designated. The existing uses of the commercial plaza and the enabling policies are from the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy. Those are IP1B for the rezoning and IP5 for the development agreement. Next slide. So the MPS enumerates a number of criteria that council must consider when making its decision. So the relevant criteria are compatibility and consistency with adjacent uses and built form, provisions for landscaping, buffering, and screening, the adequacy of existing street and service networks, proximity to schools and recreation amenities, discouraging a scattered development pattern or sprawl, safe pedestrian movement within the site, drainage and soil stability, the adequacy of parking, usable amenity space, and encouraging the preservation of mature trees and other natural features. Next slide. So we haven't had any additional community comments since we last spoke about this at the public hearing. We had pretty strong support from the community. We didn't do a PIM for this, but we mailed out almost 200 fact sheets. We had 19 people call me or email to express their, for the most part, support. And we had over 1,300 page views for the website. That's probably actually more now, but I haven't updated that since the public hearing. And then there were just over 600 notices mailed for the public hearing. Next slide. So just a summary of the key aspects of the development agreement. Like I said, it would be 5 stories tall, maximum of 16 meters tall, not including any overages required for elevators or stair enclosures. That would be approximately 60 dwelling units, and at least 30% of those will have to contain 2 or more bedrooms. Some commercial uses on the ground floor, indoor above ground vehicle parking and surface vehicle parking. Bicycle parking would be required in accordance with the Dartmouth land use bylaw, and there would be indoor and outdoor amenity space for residents. Next slide. The non-substantive amendments that would be permitted by the development agreement are changes to the landscaping requirements, granting an extension to the dates of commencement or completion of development, changes to architectural requirements that don't impact the massing of the building, and changes to sign requirements. Next slide. So this is the road that this application has taken. There's several steps before it comes to the staff report stage. So it's quite a long process that our applicant has gone through. We've gone through 2 more bubbles since we were at the public hearing, and now we're at the stage in dark blue there, the development agreement. So the rezoning, it was approved at the last meeting and has gone through its 14-day appeal period. So now we're asking council to make a decision on the development agreement itself. And then we'll also have to have a 14-day appeal period for the development agreement. And then there's some back and forth with the applicant when they apply signatures, and HRM also applies their signatures. And the DA is registered at the land registration office, and then they can go to the development officer for their permits. Can I have the next slide, please? So this application is coming forward with a positive staff recommendation. So the recommendation is to approve the proposed development agreement and to require that the development agreement be signed by the property owner within 240 days. Next slide. So that's the end of my presentation, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I believe Council Austin may have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one quick question. When I look at the, just a second here, let me bring up my own thing, the east elevation. So that the ground floor there, the east elevation is, I mean, that's an awfully long blank wall on the first floor. From our park, if I'm looking at the overhead plan correctly, will that wall really be visible, or is that wall basically going to be, especially the first level of it, hidden behind a privacy fence?
There will be a fence there, but also there's a slight grade, so I don't believe it'll be visible from the park because it'll be downhill.
Okay, thank you. It's not you know, long blank walls like that aren't necessarily a good design thing, but if they if a hill and a fence, then that's probably okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from any other councilors for clarification? Hearing none.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, yeah, you missed mine as well in the chat.
Oh, okay, I don't have the chat line on here. I'm looking on my phone.
Councillor Kent is first.
Okay, Councillor Kent, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. So I have a question around what appears right now. I'm just looking at Google Earth, and there's some very mature trees surrounding this lot. They are a somewhat of a buffer between the two, the adjacent neighbor closest to it on Kennedy Drive. I'm wondering, in this approval, is that considered to be a do not disturb, or not, I don't know, non-disturbance area? Mature trees are hard to come by, and after development projects, and I just want to know if any of those big trees are going to be protected.
So through you to the councillor, Mr. Chair, the good news is that that isn't actually on the subject site. There's a narrow strip of land that's owned by HRM that runs parallel to Caledonia Road, basically all the way down. So there's a narrow buffer between the subject site and the park. And so those trees are located on HRM property.
And what about it on the street line? Do you know, is that open season on that?
So there isn't any requirement in the development agreement that those be maintained. However, the landscaping plan does require new trees and vegetation to be planted in the front yard and in the Kennedy Drive yard. So my expectation is that the landscaping would improve.
And how far from the buffer, the municipal property would this building be?
So just let me pull up my site plan here. Mr. Clerk, if you could pull up slide 10.
Thank you.
So it's a 5-meter minimum buffer between the building and the property line.
Okay. Can you put that picture back up? Thank you. Perfect. And so Kennedy is there. So that's 5 meters. Am I seeing this right? That 5 meters is so they're planning to also vegetate that in some way, which
Yes.
would have to the municipal property. Okay.
Yes, that was correct.
Okay, thank you. I'll save the rest of my questions for the proponent. Thank you.
Councillor Mancini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jimmy Allen, thank you as always. I had a landscaping question. I think Councillor Beck can't really address that. Mike, from the last time we discussed it, not that long ago, when we did the zoning piece, my not concern, but my desire, and I think the community's desire for this building is that street presence. And we talked about that last time. In the development agreement conversation we're having here now, is there anything that we can do to ensure that commercial stays, that there's an opportunity for an outdoor amenities related to the business that possibly may be in that on that first floor?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, through you, the council. I'm not sure I understand. So there would be landscaping in the front yard and facing Caledonia Road. That's what I mean by the front yard. Is that what you're referring to, Councillor Mancini?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily referring to landscaping. I'm referring to commercial. I think commercial is important, that we have good commercial in this area. We're looking forward to that. The community is looking forward to that. The last time when we discussed zoning, the applicant representative did talk about ensuring that, the businesses have the opportunity, whether it's a cafe or a bakery, that there's, whether they have an outdoor piece to that business, there's an opportunity to do patio tables, that type of thing. Is there any way that we can at least ensure that the space is available to do that if they attract the right business to it?
So there isn't anything in the development agreement that would prevent that from happening. So the way we've structured it is to require a minimum amount of amenity space per unit in the building. So it's not specifically defined where that amenity space needs to be located. So for example, if the plan is to have amenity space in the front yard, but there's a business who would like to use the front yard for a patio, there's nothing in the development agreement that would prevent that, so long as the amenity space is provided somewhere else. Similarly, the development agreement is permissive in the sense that commercial uses are permitted on the ground floor, but they're not required. We don't have a maximum number of units that are permitted in the buildings, as it's more controlled through the size of the building and the setbacks and the height and so forth. So it's permitted to be commercial, but not required to be commercial. However, it's been consistently communicated to me throughout the process that the intention of the applicant is to have commercial uses on the ground floor.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're muted, Mr. Chair.
I'm just checking the chat line, sir, to see if anybody else is in there. Don't think so. All right. So do I get a motion from the local councillor on the matter?
Yes, I'm happy to put the motion on the floor, Mr. Chair. I put the Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council, 1, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment B of the January 22nd, 2021 report, and 2, require that the development agreement be signed by the property owner within 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of the final approved by council and any other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, which is later. Otherwise, the approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at end. So moved.
A second.
Second, Councillor Kent. Any debate on the motion?
No, just a quick comment, if I may, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kent, for seconding that. The community is looking forward to this. The building that's there is outdated, even though we've had some great businesses over the years being there. We need the units. We need a nice structure on this corner. I look forward to this enhancing the community. And so I hope everybody supports this and we can get the process going. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments from anyone else?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to follow up again on that non-disturbance area. On the treat area. One of the challenges that I'm facing on some of the development agreements that are in District 3 are around this sort of accepted notion that they can work right up to the disturbance area, and then or even within the disturbance area, and the assumption or the requirement is that they reinstate it. But it's very, very hard to reinstate those kinds of beautiful mature trees, and the communities need those. We spend money regularly to bring trees to our subdivisions and our residential areas. So I'm raising that for consideration for the proponent as the applicant here, if they're listening. I think during the last the rezoning that we talked about, I talked about being bold around the facade design. I know that staff need to keep it within, something that fits with the community, but communities that want and need some new energized excitement about their communities, and new, just a new look, not something drastic, but a new and updated look. And I think that's really healthy for communities. So I don't know where that fits and if an applicant has got any designs forward, but I'd ask staff to consider that. And I want to echo as well Councillor Mancini's points around commercial space, especially in neighborhoods that, not everybody wants to have to go to the downtown area to access some commercial space, whether it's food and coffee shops or some retail or service providers. So, but it is important that I think every time we think about putting new developments in communities where infusion of some new exciting services come along, we do it in a way that is welcoming, that they have these street frontage opportunities that helps with not only inviting the community in, but the success of the business as well, because we've got to think about that all together on a holistic approach to it. So I hope staff will be looking at that as the permits come forward for this particular application and in any other that we see come forward in the future. Thank you.
Is there any other further comments from any other members of council? Seeing none, I'll call for the question then. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried unanimously. Thank you very much, folks. Now, just to get to my agenda here. Next item is, I don't have it in front of me. I lost my agenda here. One moment, please. I believe it's the center plan B, isn't it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, well, let's have the staff come forward and start the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good evening, councillors. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Ben Sivak, Community Policy Program Manager with Planning and Development, and essentially the project manager for Central Plan Package B. And I'll start sharing my screen and get off to the races. No, so before I just dive in, I just acknowledge that I'm fortunate to be here, the one presenting this package, a pretty significant milestone in this project. But I acknowledge all the staff that have worked on this before me, and also to get to this point. Too many to name, because really not just the Central Plan team that are a couple of the staff members here tonight, but really all the planning and development, as well as other municipal departments as well. There my slides go. Oh, I can make this a little bit bigger screen. So what I'm going to cover tonight, I think I described this as a kind of a medium-sized presentation. Councillor Austin has already seen this twice, so it won't be quite as long as the one at CDAC, but there's a lot of information to cover in quite a lengthy report package. So I do want to cover the basis so that councillor is aware of all the key components, and of course happy to answer questions at the end. So I'll spend the majority of the presentation going over the Central Plan context and the planning process to get everyone up to speed on all the work that's been done to date. Touch on the Package A, which is approved in 2019, and some of the key updates proposed through this Package B process. Spend most of the time on what is in Package B, and also some of the key updates based on community feedback compared to the last draft. And briefly touch on governance, the repeal amendments to existing planning documents. We are talking about replacing existing plans, and also the remaining committee and council review process. And of course, ending with the recommendation to Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council. So first, just to set the stage for context, I think as councillors are aware, Central Plan is part of a broader secondary plan and bylaw simplification process. And to be frank, for a variety of reasons, the municipality has a overly complex and in some cases outdated planning framework. Not so much that the regional plan has been updated and continues to be maintained. It's the secondary planning levels that in some cases haven't been updated since the 90s or 80s. And in this case, the regional center portion of the municipality is where some of the oldest plans and bylaws are in place. So it's no surprise that the first phase is focusing on the central plan, where some of the bylaws are most needed updating. And just for context, what we mean by the regional center, it's the area shown on the screen. It is not a very large area when it comes to the overall size of HRM, but it contains 25% of the population. And of course is also the political, economic, and cultural center of the municipality. It's the area that has our major facilities and our major office buildings and our major commercial areas. Up until the pandemic, it was also the area that had the lowest vacancy rates. Things a little bit turned on its head in the last year, but it continues to be a tight rental market in municipality, and tight rental market in an area that is seeing a lot of interest in housing and development. The regional plan targets at least 25% of growth to the regional center, and the Arbor IMP targets up to 40%. And this is to take advantage of some of the efficiencies with directing growth to areas that already are served well by transit and shops and services and major parks and open spaces. In terms of how we've been doing in the last couple of years, between 2018 and 2020, the regional center accommodated 23% of the net housing starts in the municipality, so not quite hitting those regional plan targets, although it does fluctuate from year to year, and it has been higher in past years. And just to put that in absolute value, we're talking about over $270 million in construction value. So without going into too much detail, just to provide an overview of the central plan process to date, and really the conversations and the development of the plan really predate. Probably go back at least a decade. But the central plan process, as we know, it really started in September 2015 with the start of a number of background studies and community engagement, kind of a broad-based community visioning exercise, which continues to inform the policies and regulations today. From there, an important milestone was the development of the central plan policy framework, also known as a purple document, which council approved to give guiding directions to the development of the actual planning document. So again, this continues to be an important milestone, a document you'll look back to for package as part of this package B process. From there, because because of the complexity of the plan and because the project was so large, it was split into two packages, two phases. Package A focused on high growth areas and was approved by council on September 19. So it's in place now and parts of the regional center and is guiding development approvals today. Package B is intended to cover all the remaining areas that weren't included in Package A, but resulted in one comprehensive plan. So it's not as though we're going to have a Package A and a Package B plan at the end of the day. At the end of the process, there's going to be one regional center planning strategy and land use bylaw, including both Package A and Package B lands. And just to touch base on some of the past consultation and before Package B process, we can focus a lot on some of the more detailed consultations that happened in the past months, but Package B and the policies and directions still continue to build on that broad-based vision I mentioned earlier that happened between March 2016 and 2018. So just to highlight that a lot of that consultation is still on record and it still continues to guide the planning framework today. In terms of Package B engagement, I think this is one of the projects like other municipal projects and projects around the world that were very much impacted by the COVID-19 state of emergency that was declared in March of 2020. Just before the start of the pandemic, the Package B engagement process was able to hold 10 pop-up meetings and 12 stakeholder sessions that were very, very productive and got some great feedback. But the 8 public meetings that were scheduled will have to be canceled, of course, along with many other social gatherings at the time. From there, the project, we needed to pivot and switch strategies to more of a virtual engagement strategy and more of a using as many tools as possible to try to still get the quality public feedback that we needed to move the project forward. This included switching to virtual formats of meetings, social media and correspondence, online surveys on their various topics of Package B, virtual stakeholder meetings upon request or whenever we can organize them, and the remaining phases of the engagement process focusing on the established residential, so the low density areas of the plan, and also the St. Patrick Alexandra site. And to highlight for the committee that what we heard reported about Package B has been produced and it was presented to the Community Design Advisory Committee on March 2nd. So it's something on the Central Plan Package B website. It can be a resource for councillors to look back and see what kind of feedback received from stakeholders and the public. It outlines the Package B engagement process, all the feedback that we received, some of the key themes, also includes the detailed survey summaries, the focus consultation that outlines the focus consultation that was done on the St. Patrick Alexandra site, and includes the whole attachments of all the correspondence and site-specific requests. Okay, so that was a brief overview of the process of how we got here to date. So I'll switch gears at this time to focus on Package A. So it was already being improved, and I'll spend a little bit less time on this one, but also highlight what are some of the key proposed updates that are included as part of Package B. So first of all, I think most importantly, Package A established the core concept of the planning framework for the regional center. And these are continuing to be carried forward in Package B. So these are complete communities, so having access to all the community needs, shops, services, recreation opportunities, ideally within walking distance of where people live and work. Human scale design, pedestrian first, and strategic growth. And the Package A designation, so when I mentioned earlier, Package A focused on the high growth areas, included downtown Dartmouth, the centers, so places like Wise Road and Coomble Road, where the broadest mix of uses and some of the highest densities are permitted. So this is where you'd see high-rise buildings in both the downtown and the center designation, as well as mid-rise permitted in those areas. The corridors shown in pink on the map were applied to transit corridors, areas that could support mid-rise and cover a more mixed-use environment. The higher order residential, which is more of a residential focused kind of apartment building context, and also future growth nodes, which directs the development of master neighborhood plans, the areas that could experience significant redevelopment growth in the years to come. Package A also established a number of policy areas that really apply to package areas, but also apply to all of package B, all the different areas. And I'll quickly touch on some of the highlights. Through package A, council approved a number of progressive urban design policies and regulations. So this is where, for the first time in a municipality, we're regulating development density with floor area ratio. So more worried about the size and shape of the building than what was, and being less concerned about how they're used inside. Also important controls about transition between high density and low density areas and landscaping. Through package A, there also established a number of cultural and heritage policies, identifying significant cultural landscapes, proposed heritage conservation districts that we're going to require a work program through the heritage team to bring to fruition, and also a development agreement option for registered heritage properties. Housing is also, of course, a key component of this plan and package A as well, with the housing policy supporting providing a variety of housing options, including secondary suites and shared housing, and also establishing the framework for the bonus zoning program to focus on money in lieu for affordable housing developments. From the economic development perspective, supports the streamlined development process. Again, a variety of development options, both large scale and small scale. The mobility section of the plan reinforces that the strategic growth objectives about guiding the location of development, coordinating with transit and mobility, so that the highest where growth and development is located is coordinated with mobility network improvements. It also established transportation reserves for to preserve lands for future roads, such as the Dundas Street extension. The environment section builds on the regional plan directions about wetland protections and water courses to provide some more specific directions to the regional center. Things like allowing for solar panels to exceed the maximum building height, so that's not a barrier to it. And through package B, also enhancing the vertical coastal setbacks to apply not to residential development, but also commercial and institutional uses, with some additional flexibility for the waterfront, special areas on Dartmouth and the Halifax waterfronts. And package A also established the implementation policies about the criteria for considering development agreements, site plan approvals, and transition policies as well. So some of the key package A updates, some of the key updates proposed to the kind of package B items through this package B process is probably the most significant one is the proposal to streamline the use of the site plan approval tool. In package A, the tools was used for kind of any development over a certain size that required some notification and review by design and advisory committee. Through experience, now administrating the approved package A for over a year, I guess about a year and a half now, we're seeing that there are some package Bs are proposing to address some of the inefficiencies or some of the concerns with that approach by using the site plan approval to more for the exception instead of the rule. So for reserving the tool for variations when a development proposal want to do something different than the standard land use requirements, instead of using the tool to meet requirements that were already fairly prescriptive in nature. There's also some minor changes to built form and building design requirements, mostly just clarification or a slight less prescription to some of the design requirements. There's a few additional packages A owned land. So in Dartmouth, that the most significant one would be a new proposed future growth node in the South Vale area. There is a transportation reserve proposed along Roby Street, which will may still be refined based on expected council direction in the coming months. Refinement to front and flanking setbacks to more closely match the existing setbacks and support landscaping. There is a site-specific St. Patrick Alexander site-specific development agreement policy proposed for the St. Patrick Alexander site, and this is in response to council direction through package A to consider higher density in the site and some of the great feedback we received to that focused consultation. I'll note that through this package B process, we're proposing to bring forward some site-specific policies for Spring Garden Road and Robus Street lands that was approved by council just prior to the approval of package B. We're pulling that council-approved policies into package B to provide a little bit more flexibility in terms of the review criteria and also address concerns about timelines. It's quite a large development involving a lot of registered historic properties. And that's why that's being proposed to bring forward. And also a few updates to the implementation policy, largely to clarify when rezoning proposals can be considered and some of the review criteria. Okay, so that was package A, designations and zones. I'll focus now on what the key parts of what package B is covering, the remaining areas of the regional center. So, first, most importantly, a key part of complete communities that wasn't covered in package A, it was a parks and community facility designation. So this is applied to parks and open spaces, public schools and community facilities and club recreation uses. So parks and also other facilities that are in an open space setting. And it's intended to protect and support a connected public park and open space network. The designation establishes two zones, a regional park zone, and it's applied to lands that are identified in the regional plan. So parks that are regional significance, such as Point Pleasant Park. It also establishes a park and community facility zone, which is applied to all other public parks and community facilities in that open space setting. There is also continues to be guiding direction to develop a regional center open space plan to with the planning strategy, guide the programming and investments in the parks and open space in the municipalities to support the expected growth in residents in the area. The downtown designation, which was already applied to Dartmouth, is also now applied to downtown Halifax, and it's intended to support the development of the core where largest scale and most intense uses are encouraged. The downtown designation establishes for downtown Halifax a DH zone. So downtown Dartmouth already will have its own zone. I will note that the part of downtown Halifax plan isn't pulled into package B. The Barrington Street and Old South Suburb Heritage Conservation Districts will continue to live on under the existing Halifax plan, and that has to do with the complexities with also amending the heritage conservation districts under the Heritage Property Act, a little bit more complicated, but that's expected to be completed in the coming year or two under the downtown Halifax Heritage Conservation Plan to deal with the historic property area. There are some detailed policies for the Cogswell area to be incorporated into the completion of the master, to be incorporated following the completion of the master plan. So the Cogswell lands are part of package B, but until those road networks are closed and the new subdivision happens, it's difficult to put, I guess we need that to take place before we make decisions on building heights and other design details. And we're expected to initiate a separate planning process immediately following package B to consult with the community and update that part of the plan. And I'll also note some increased flexibility for the waterfront special areas on both the Dartmouth and waterfront, the Dartmouth and Halifax waterfronts to support things like kiosks and harbor related uses on the waterfront. The established residential designation is arguably the biggest part of the package B. It covers about a third of the regional center, and it's applied to the prominent low-rise residential neighborhoods throughout Dartmouth and Halifax. And it's intended to retain the scale of existing low-rise residential neighborhoods while providing opportunities for more housing options. So the designation, consistent with region-wide policies, permits secondary suites, backyard suites, and also shared housing, home occupations, and daycare uses. It does allow for local commercial and institutional uses to be considered by development agreement. The previous draft, as some councillors may know, was proposed to allow these as a right. And through the community feedback, staff are recommending development agreement tool because it can fine tune the controls and control things like hours of operations, which are important in a residential context. The designation establishes 4 zones. the established as residential 1 or ER1, which allows for 1 unit plus the accessory suites. Established residential 2, which allows for 2 units, for example, semis or 2 units plus accessory suites. The established residential 3, which is applied along more transit corridors, will allow for 3 units plus 6 accessory suites, as well as townhouse style developments. And also a cluster housing zone, which is also a new update in comparison to previous versions of Package B. And to fine tune some of the controls of the residential neighborhoods, recognizing that many neighborhoods are constructed at different times and have different characters. The plan also establishes 5 precincts and 10 special areas to fine tune things like the maximum lot coverage or setbacks, things that kind of define the built form of various neighborhoods. The institutional employment designation is also a big part of the regional center. And it's where we have some of our major institutions like the hospitals, universities, colleges, and it's also applied to small scale institutions like libraries and community centers. And it's intended to support the use and expansion of many thriving institutions located in the city. We're glad to have them here, and we want them to stay and expand. The institutional employment designation establishes 5 zones. The first being the institutional zone, which is generally applied to more of the small scale institutions, so places of worship and community centers. 2 university and college zones. This is a change from a previous draft where we only had 1, and that is because the UC1 zone is applied to more of the university college that have a more of an open space setting, whereas a university college zone has more of an urban form setting, kind of pulling from more of a downtown zoning framework with limited open space. We also have 2 zones for the hospital and Department of National Defense zones. However, they're fairly light on detail because, as you know, the province and the federal government do not typically get the municipal development permits, but we do have some basic zoning zoning regulations applied in place for reference. There are policies about adaptive reuse of certain landmark buildings. So policies and regulations that would support some identified places of worship, for example, to redevelop into housing, provided they largely maintain the form of that development. So it's to encourage the maintenance of some of these buildings. And also note that there is support for the potential expansion and reuse through the land use bylaw amendment. So if a college or university or one of the institutions ever wanted to expand, there would be a process to go through community council and not opening up the whole plan to go through a larger regional plan amendment process, larger plan amendment process. The industrial employment designation is applied to the existing industrial and mixed-use industrial areas, significant industrial lands along the harbor front, for example, and it supports industrial, limited commercial, and harbor-related industries. The industrial employment designation establishes the 3 zones: the light industrial zone, which is applied to the Woodside Industrial Park and a couple of other areas. The harbor-related industrial zone, which will apply along the harbor, a lot of places like urban shipyards, and the commercial light industrial zone, which is applied to areas like Kemp Road and portions of Windmill Road that kind of already have that mix of commercial and light industrial. It's there's also a mixed industrial and commercial special areas that's applied not only to the Seaport Market area, but also the Cove area in Dartmouth to support a real mix of industrial and commercial uses. So it's a very broad mix of uses are supported in those areas. Also note that there are some proposed policies related to Halifax Green elevator risk assessment and development agreement policies to manage residential development in the short term, while we continue to work with the Halifax Port Authority to assess the potential safety risk with the proximity of that facility to increase the interest in residential development in the area. And I'll also note additional opportunities for research and development of facility uses in the center and the downtown zones to allow things like prototyping and small-scale manufacturing to take place in more of a mixed-use setting. The last designation that's included in Package B is the water access designation, and this is an interesting one. It's applied to pre-Confederation water lots that are present on Lake Bunnock and Lake Micmac, and also the Northwest Arm. and it's intended to protect the unique character and environment of waterfront areas. The water access designation, essentially recognizes that we can't control the infill in a water lot, though those approvals can be granted by the federal government or provincial government. However, after the lots are filled, we can certainly control if and how the land is used afterwards. So this is why the zones are created, as well as for special areas, and it generally limits permitted uses to parks and water access structures, boat clubs in certain cases, and public infrastructure and accessory uses. Some COVID-19 considerations, in working through this project over the past year, I often get asked about the changing context, not just in Nova Scotia, but of course around the world. And of course, Package A was approved before we were even using terms like social distancing and lockdowns. And the context is very different. And the truth is, we don't actually know what the next years ahead will look like, whether or not there'll be a shift in commuting patterns or what will happen. But we have put quite a bit of thought into the context and what it means for this planning project. And what I outline is that I think the COVID-19 pandemic is illustrating the importance of complete communities. It's one of the core concepts of the center plan. The importance of being able to access food and services and open spaces near to where you live, I think is highlighted as being so important. Also, the strength of flexible land use controls, which are kind of baked into the center plan framework with many of the mixed use zones, so that an office building, say in downtown Dartmouth, can easily convert to a residential use or vice versa, depending on market needs. We also took a second look at pedestrian-oriented commercial streets regulations. These are ones that require commercial active streetscapes along certain streets. We made some small adjustment to also allow office uses outside of the downtown designation, just because many office users are actually quite active as well, and also to provide a bit more flexibility for the use of those spaces. You'd rather see them filled with some sort of successful businesses than empty storefronts, so recognizing that there might be some challenges in the short term. As I mentioned, the streamlined approach to site plan approvals, and this could also help bring projects to fruition a little bit faster. And also, Package B makes some minor adjustments to transition timeframes for development agreements. When you're going from an old plan to a new plan, we're trying to make it smooth, not cause problems for projects that have proceeded in good faith under the old plans. And for this reason, recognizing that private developments, the private sector is also dealing with the challenges of COVID-19, are proposing an additional 12 months to those timeframes. Also highlight that in the staff package, we tried to be very transparent and thorough about reviewing the many site-specific requests we received for increased height or change in zoning. And we're looking at all these requests. We looked at opportunities to correct errors or inconsistency. So obviously, if there's an oversight, we'd fix that. The impact, we also considered the impacts on neighboring properties, reducing nonconformities, supporting local context, and alignment with the approved central plan or regional plan policies, and of course other regional council decisions and associated public feedback. And there are I'll highlight two attachments, part of the staff, part of the central plan package staff report, and that's attachment K, and attachment L, with outlines these in tables and provides the rationale why staff did or did not support the requests. As I mentioned about these, the plan and bylaw simplification. So on one hand, there's a whole new plan and bylaw being proposed, but as part of the simplification program, this also means retiring or archiving some of our older plans. So this includes the repeal of the central plan and land use bylaw for Package A, because it's going to be folded into Package B. It'll be one plan. The repeal of the plan and bylaw for downtown Dartmouth, the repeal of the Halifax, the Peninsula land use bylaw, pretty significant amendments to the Dartmouth plan and land use bylaw, carving out the regional center, but would still live on for the other parts of Dartmouth. And also amendments to the downtown Halifax plan. As I mentioned, the HCDs, the Heritage Conservation Districts, need to remain in place a little while longer, but the rest of the plan would be folded into the central plan framework. Also, just quickly touch on governance. Some of these carrying forward some of the decisions that were made through the package B process. So this means the continuation of the community council role. So this community council, Harbour East Community Drive Community Council and Halifax West Community Council would continue to be have the role of reviewing site-specific requests like development agreements, whereas Regional Center Community Council would handle region-wide amendments to the land use bylaw and also appeals to site plan approvals. There's direction in the staff report to update the terms of reference for the design advisory committee to take into account that the larger geography. We're not just talking about package A lands anymore, but almost all the regional center. I'll note the continuation of the design review committee for the remaining portion of the downtown Halifax plan, and also some updates to the administrative order respecting the incentive and bonus zoning benefits and grants for affordable housing. Following council direction from a few months ago to provide a bit more flexibility about how the money in lieu can be used. Okay, coming to the end, I'll just provide a quick overview of this current review process and the remaining steps. As I mentioned, it was just yesterday we first presented this plan to the Community Design Advisory Committee. And we'll be going to the Heritage Advisory Committee along with community councils, CPED and Design Review Committee over the coming weeks and months. So between June and July, we're expecting a number of different recommendations from these various committees from different perspectives to come together at Regional Council for discussion at committee of whole. And at this point, tentatively targeting a public hearing for September 2021. I think that remains a realistic target, but of course depends on council direction and other factors. And I want to read the detailed recommendations. They're within the agenda and in the staff reports, but just to highlight it, the multiple kind of parts of the motions are to deal with both the approval of the proposed regional center municipal plan strategy and land use bylaw, so the package B documents, and also the repeal and amendments of some of the existing documents that's intended to replace. Thank you, and with that, I think myself and the staff are here to provide support. I'll be happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much there, Ben. I believe there'll be some comments and questions as well as probably some amendments, I believe, coming this way. So who do I start with first? How about Councillor Austin, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know whether I should go first. At this point, maybe I'll put the motion on the floor if that's okay. I'd like to do that.
Go for it. Go for it.
Okay, it's going to take some reading. Okay, so I move that Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council recommend that Halifax Regional Council 1, give first reading and schedule a public hearing to consider the Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy and the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments A and B of the May 7th, 2021 report. 2, give first reading and schedule a public hearing to consider the proposed amendments to the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy and the Dartmouth Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments C and D of the report. 3, adopt the Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy and the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments A and B of the report, including repealing the Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy, Package A, the Regional Center Land Use Bylaw, Package A, the Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy for Downtown Dartmouth, and the Land Use Bylaw for Downtown Dartmouth. 4, adopt the proposed amendments to the Dartmouth Municipal Planning Strategy and Dartmouth Land Use Bylaw as set out in attachments C and D of the report.
Second by Mancini.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Councillor Mancini. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've now seen this twice, actually. This is my third time in 3 days seeing this the center plan before me. So at this time, I don't have any questions. I do have 2 amendments that are coming that I'd like to put on the floor. But I was thinking for flow of the meeting, where some of my colleagues, they're seeing this for the first time, maybe it's best to go to like Councillor Kent right now, and I'll come back once we've run out of general questions with my specific amendments, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'll give you the 5 minutes now if you wish, and then when you bring your other amendments forward, be 5 minutes on that. Top of that, push you can speak a second time if necessary. So, all right, Councillor Kent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh, wow. Thank you, Ben. Wow. You guys have been working really hard. I have to say, all of this center plan started when I was on council before, and it's still going. And so kudos to you. I feel like doing like a hip hip hooray for you all. I really do. So it is, I have to say, a little difficult kind of trying to jump into the deep end right now. And I regret that the last little while, I've always sort of in my head kept saying, well, it's the center plan. It's not in my district. But now it's so fulsome. I know I now have to tuck in and spend a little more time, certainly before we get to council, to better understand it, because it is so important and so important. I think it's incredibly good work. I really like the designations of the particular kinds of zones, like the Department of National Defense zone and things such as those sorts of things, and the way we've organized it. What I have a question though on, and I think this is one of the areas where I think you touched on it right near the end, which was the Dartmouth land use bylaws captures part of District 3 outside the center plan. So when we make these kinds of changes, we are going to go back into that and make amendments. And there's going to be a lot of them. When staff, and how are we going to communicate this degree of change to our public? I find our bylaws and our municipal planning strategies difficult at the best of times to read through and understand, with this amendment and that amendment, and knowing you staff are wonderful and you get it and you know it, you live it, you breathe it. But I find it hard, and I see it more than the public. And the public, should somebody decide to be involved in something where they have to look up something, it could be very simple. It's complicated. So how are we going to package this in a way that does not confuse the public and your counselors and our supports, to make sure that we get a good articulation of this? Because this is really, really great stuff. It's really good information. It's really good changes. So that's going to be important. The other piece I want to touch on is, I think, again, you touched on this, which was, did I hear it right? Which was a zone that we might look towards in the future that is around faith-based zoning. And maybe I heard it wrong, and just my head went there, where housing development might happen in conjunction with that, but that original use has to stay. Did I hear that right?
Want to answer that, Ben?
You're muted.
I'm not. Ben is.
Ben is muted.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I have to do that at least once a day. I was saying I can certainly answer that one, but I can also answer the other points unless you wanted to continue on, and I can circle back and.
Yeah, no, I can circle. I'll circle back. I think there's some feedback that I would appreciate now.
Okay, through the chair, I'll answer your first question. I mean, your last question first, because I think it's top of mind at the moment. Yeah. I think what I think caught your attention is my reference to landmark buildings, special provisions, what we call landmark buildings. And and I guess instead of saying churches, I said places of worship to be a little bit more more inclusive. So landmark buildings, they're actually identified in a map of being these ones. So they're not registered heritage properties, but they are still important landmarks in our community, and they are zoned institutional. But recognizing that the realities of the day, it can't always keep a use for that purpose. We can include some specific flexibility so that a place of worship could potentially redevelop for, say, housing as a right without going through a rezoning process or asking for special permissions if they keep the building themselves, keep the building largely intact. So it's kind of an emphasis on trying to keep those landmark buildings, as they contribute to a community character in place, as maybe the uses inside them evolve because the needs of the community might have changed. So that's what I was getting at with that item.
So to clarify that, that is something that you would be looking at or is in place if these get adopted?
Yeah, it's part of the proposal, so it would be in place if this gets adopted.
Okay.
And to provide a bit more specific, the earlier draft of package B allowed for about 5% change to the floor area. We've heard back from stakeholders that was a bit too little when you might have to add, entrance ways and things like that. So we increased that to 10%. So as long as you keep your floor area of one of the identified landmark buildings, that the adaptive reuse, you could reuse the structure for a residential or even a bit of commercial use.
Thank you. And I think the other one was around the communication to the public and the municipal changes, the bylaw changes.
Absolutely. Again, through Mr. Chair. First, I think you were commenting on the amendments to the Dartmouth plan, and you're right. So it's carving out a big part of the existing Dartmouth plan and we're leaving it in place for places like Burnside areas outside of Surfers Country Highway. And in terms of communication, I think that is one of the big reasons why the center plan process has been going on for a number of years, because there's been so much emphasis on envisioning and engagement. I can't say that there are people in the regional center who maybe have never heard of the center plan, but we really are been trying hard to engage and make sure people are aware and have a chance to comment. Especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, we're really using social media as much as we can, and going out on a limb and using an Ask Me Anything session to try to hit a different demographic. So, we see a lot of people engaged and aware. I can't say everybody is aware, but really trying hard to be transparent and open about that. And I'd add that the Center Plan website is a great resource, and we have a number of actually updated a number of fact sheets about the zoning, because not everybody is going to go reading through our detailed land use bylaw. You're right, not everybody understand it. You do need you need to have some experience to know what that all means.
Yeah.
So we do have these presentations, videos, and these quick fact sheets that people can look at to understand what that means for what does established residential zone means versus their R1 zone that are used to, and so on. So we get the short answer is that we're doing the best we can, and it has been a significant effort, not just over the past year, but over the past 5+ years.
Okay. Well, thank you. I'll come around, Mr. Chair, when the others have spoken. Thank you.
Okay. Who's next in the chat line? I don't see any hands up. Councilor Mancini, anything?
I have some amendments, Mr. Chair, but I'm going to add them possibly to Councillor Austin's amendments. So it's probably best for him to go first, and then I'll go after him.
Okay. Before we go to Councillor Austin, I just had a question. I think we had the same discussion over in Halifax area when we use the boundary lines and stuff. What about the developments that are on the cusp? Like, for instance, Baker Drive is on the wrong side of the circumferential highway according to the center plan, and all that development in there. What loss of disadvantage do they have being on the wrong side of the highway in regards to development issues according to the center plan? Or could some of their center plan abilities be applied to their property since they abut the zone?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you raise a good point, and I think that the main answer to that one, I think that's a good reason why we need to get moving with the suburban plan to do what we're doing to the center plan and continue it on and learn from that experience and hopefully move that process along a little quicker. At the end of the day, right, especially in the Dartmouth side of circumferential highways, it can be a little bit of an arbitrary boundary between different growth. The existing plans in place have their issues, but certainly still allow development. So a place like Baker Drive can continue to grow under the existing Dartmouth plan. But there's no quick ability for lands adjacent to the regional center plan to use the same development agreement policies or the same tools. There was a focus on the regional center as the core of the municipality, and the next phase is to learn from that and to get on with updating the suburban plans as well.
Okay, and just that I just know that those areas on the cusp, even Main Street in Dartmouth, there is also another great potential development area posed for great opportunities, but again, on the wrong side of the highway. So I just kind of curious of how we're going to address those discrepancies or inequities. But I guess you answered the question when we get into this suburban plans. I don't know if you want to call that part of Dartmouth suburban, but I guess it's going to have to be in the context of we're talking center plan versus, you got the hole of the donut, and then we got to do the ring of the donut. So, so anyway, okay, thank you very much. Any further questions, Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for raising that, and great answer, Ben, that we need to move on with the suburban plan. I really look forward to being part of that for the whole journey, because I think that it's we've learned a lot through this. So, and I think that I trust the councillors that have been there for the longer journey to to carry a lot of the load and making sure that we've met the mark. I look forward to the amendments that Councillor Mancini and Councillor Austin are bringing forward. I may have some questions to them on those. One of the things, I would not be on the Dartmouth side of the harbour if and representing well, if I didn't make note of presentations. And I didn't see a lot of Dartmouth pictures. I just want you to be aware of that. And I'm saying that knowing that I perhaps missed some, but it's our job to make sure that when we're talking about the center plan, it's both sides of the harbour. And there were some points where you were talking about Dartmouth, but all we saw was Halifax. So anyway, just saying, I'm going to shout out to Councilor McCluskey. She would have been saying it if I am not doing it now. So I just thought I'd raise that before we get to council. And on
that point, we should say happy birthday to Gloria. It's her 90th birthday today.
Oh, it's awesome. Yes, happy birthday, Gloria, if you're paying attention. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I look forward to hearing from Councillor Austin and Councillor Mancini on their amendments.
Okay, let's go to Councillor Austin then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so I have two amendments. Probably the easiest thing to do would be to do number 5 first, since it's the long list. Number 6 is a little bit different in flavor. So I'll move that we amend the main motion to add 5. Consider the following amendments. Apply ER2 zone to properties with frontage on Charles Street. Apply higher order residential zone to 79 Creighton Avenue, Edgemere. Zone properties with frontage on Portland Street from Old Ferry Road, Maynard Street to Hawthorne Street, ER1 instead of ER2 and ER3, and adjust the proposed Five Corners Heritage Conservation District identified in map 20 to include those properties. Increase the permitted height for 48 Rodney Road and PID 41430869 to 20 meters. Increase the permitted height for 317, 317, 321, and 325 Prince Albert Road from 20 meters to 26 meters. Reduce the permitted height for the higher order residential portion of 10 Maple Street to 11 meters. Zone properties at the corner of Pine and Myrtle Streets, including 38 Pine, 34 Myrtle, and PID 4146371 ER3. Zone 29 Victoria Road is either downtown Dartmouth or higher order residential with a low FAR value or low height limit to enable the property to be used for accessory surface parking for the adjacent multi-unit building or modest future redevelopment. Include the undeveloped rear portion of 1 Research Drive, PID 4043292 in the Southdale Future Growth Node and zone that portion of the property CDD1. Include PID 4128056 at the top of Mount Hope Avenue in the Southdale Future Growth Node and apply the CDD1 zone. Create site-specific policies for 7 and 11 Mount Hope Avenue to allow corridor zone uses through development agreement. Apply PCF zone to PID 4120859. Apply PCF zone to 209 Green Village Lane and the corresponding walkway property on Maryland Drive. Apply ER3 zone to PID 41028531 Green Village Lane. Apply higher order residential zone to 25 Arthur Street. Apply ER2 zoning to the portion of 10 Lancaster that fronts on Cannon Terrace between 74 Cannon and 4 and 8 Viridian Drive. The ER2 portion should align with the rear property line of 74 Cannon. So that's the list. If I could get a second.
Can I get a seconder, please?
Mancini seconds it. Could you repeat it again? I didn't hear him.
I trust when this gets to regional council, we're going to have a map showing all these properties, so we have a better appreciation of where these changes are occurring and have an appreciation of what's currently proposed and what's being amended, because I think that's the important thing for us to appreciate. You're going through a list, and I'd rather see a map identifying the properties, and easier to appreciate the amendments. Councilor Purdy, you had a question here.
Mr. Chair, I wanted to speak to it first.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Not that you haven't heard enough from me just reading that bloody thing. I was just going to quickly go through one line each one of them, just because for anyone watching at home who might be saying, what the heck did that guy just read? It might be useful. So Charles Street ER2 properties, the street is currently in the plan is ER1. There's a lot of it's a mixed street with single unit homes and some multi-units. ER2 zoning would probably be a better fit. Edgemere, the 79 Creighton Avenue, that's zoned institutional when it's really an apartment building. The properties on on Portland from Old Ferry to Maynard, that's our potential heritage district. If you go down the street, unfortunately, some of the big old mansions we left on the other side of that line. So that is to try and put them and the matching ER1 zoning in place for that. Rodney Road, the height increase, it's a piece of property that is undevelopable except in concert with the property next door because there's an easement across almost all of it. The property next door has 20 meters and it would avoid this sort of thing for a little kind of back chunk of the building. The permitted height on Maple Street, that is St. Peter's Church. There's a big hill there. If it's 14 meters instead of 11, it's effectively much taller than it would otherwise be just because of the elevation gain. Myrtle and Pine is the old plumbing barn. There's a proposal to redevelop that to make that into townhouses, which the ER3 zone would allow. 29 Victoria, this is a property that was demolished. It's an odd one between the multi-unit building and the cemetery that doesn't have a whole lot of redevelopment potential under the current ownership, but they can't use it as accessory surface parking unless it's included as part of with matching zoning. Over in Southdale, there's a couple pieces that I want to add to the future growth nodes so we can do some comprehensive planning. 711 Mount Hope Avenue, that's for corridor potential uses. There's interest by the hospital of having a bit more of a mix of uses there. That's this one that I'm looking for some site specific policy because I don't think in the industrial park we should allow residential just as of right, but that site is a little unique with the retirement home next door, the hospital on the other side, a park, and Eric Spicer. It's not quite industrial in flavor. There's some park zone cleanup. And I think that's probably the end of the significant notes. I'm not sure if staff noted, I'm looking at my notes here. I'm not sure if I actually read include PID 412-80546 at the top of Mount Hope Avenue in the Southdale future growth node and apply the CDD1 zone. I think I might have skipped that because I had 2 Mount Hope Avenue pieces there, but I hope we can consider that included in the motion, because it was on the list that I circulated that staff had.
So be it. Councilor Purdy.
Thank you.
Like I said, like a map too. Councilor Purdy.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilor Austin. I think you answered my question, but just to clarify, the properties that you want to zone ER1, the old Portland Street, Old Ferry Road, Maynard Street, is that already a heritage zone and you're wanting to include those other mansions into that zone because they were kind of cut off? Perfect, thank you.
All right, Councillor Kent, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Purdy hit on one, but so the second part is, and I don't know if this is to Councillor Austin or if it's to Ben. So Councillor, you have been on a part of this journey through the public engagement, through working through with staff and all that. I'm just curious, how did it get to be where all of a sudden you're coming in with this extensive laundry list of change? Is this a case of it's just so big and massive that something kind of just got lost in that? Or is this a case of where you're kind of contradicting something that staff has put forward and that's a debate?
I can speak to that, Mr. Chair, if that's okay with you.
Fine with me, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the leeway. Ben could probably chime in as well. We had a similar process in Package A. The list was actually much longer in Package A because it was the beginning sorting out the center plan. Just the sheer volume of territory that we're covering in this, where you're doing rezoning for not just one section, for the whole district. There's going to be adjustments. And so most of the list, I was quite pleased to say, most of it is actually, it's an intimidating list, but most of it's pretty minor. And I believe staff will provide a covering memo when it eventually gets to regional on the recommended changes. That's what they did with Package A. So I think you'll get a detailed, little note about each of these. Probably the only major ones down there where maybe staff and I might be of differences of opinion might be down in the industrial park, where we have some tension in terms of, do we need to protect industrial lands for employment purposes, but how does that interact with some of the existing kind of neighborhood dynamics and boundaries that are in there? So that's probably the one that's the least sorted out. I suspect most of the others, when staff come back, will be all right. So, but I wouldn't want to prejudge the staff report too much. I don't know if Mr. Chair, if staff have anything they would like to add to that point, because it's a good one. This is a really unusual sort of situation.
So before we go there, so I don't lose all my time, and Ben, I'm sorry if I'm going to preempt your answer, but part of my question probably should have been as well, are these sites already under DAs or anything, or is this how the center plan works? That you've referenced PIDs, you've referenced specific houses, whereas a lot of our bylaws are kind of blanket space of a whole streets and subdivisions are rezoned a certain thing, whereas these are very specific locations. Is that a difference in what we currently have and what the center plan is now doing, drilling down to that level? Maybe Ben should answer that one. I don't know. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for through the chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Kent, and the response from Councillor Austin. I think building on the discussion, I will. We had a chance to do a quick review of the proposed change, and I guess we'll support Councillor Austin's assessment. I think we also consider these fairly minor. These are, as with lots of planning thing, there are shades of gray. You could go. The difference between ER1 and ER2 on the grand scheme of things is fairly small. We're trying to be consistent with different neighborhoods. So we, as was done in Package A, we anticipate getting a number of different site-specific or other types of recommendations from councillors. It will come together for a supplementary report at regional council where we will provide more detailed comments about this. Yes, we support this change. We make sense because it's consistent with this, or no, we have concerns because it contradicts this overarching policy or so on. Having said that, I don't see any major issues there, and I think that Councillor Austin already touched on the one that we're a little bit scratching our heads about ourselves about the request for a housing or more mixed use behind Dartmouth Hospital, because on one hand you can understand the desire to have different types of land uses be next to a hospital, but it is also adjacent to an industrial park. yeah, and the other ones, I think we'll have to provide more comments on things like, well, does it make sense if you're going to change the zoning on this particular property? Does it also make sense to consider maybe the whole street? As you mentioned, we're generally trying to provide a consistent approach, and whole neighborhoods adjusted to certain zones. So we'll take a bit more time to look at those and provide comment back to all the council, so you can kind of have not just have some context for the councilor's request as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions there? Hearing none, I think Councilor Mancini wanted to add his amendments on as well as a friendly amendment to those, so we can all vote for the amendment as one instead of doing it twice.
That'd be great, Mr. Chair, if I may. And I did put it in the chat for people to see it, but I'll read it and then I'll speak to it to clarify why I'm putting the amendment forward. Amend the zone on 64, 67, 80, and 91 on True North Crescent in Dartmouth from established residential 3, that's ER3, to higher order residential 1, HR1, with a maximum height of 11 meters. So colleagues, you may remember this property, True North, when the federal government came down with a very quick funding source to see if municipalities had surplus land that they could get rid of to do affordable housing. So one of the areas that we identified was True North, which is in Dartmouth North. It is zoned E3 now, so established residential 3. And so the reason I'm asking for this amendment is they're building townhouses, and each of those sites that I mentioned, 64, 67, 80, and 91, which mean the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia would be required to subdivide each of them under ER3. So that would just simply slow down the process for them to build their affordable housing. So by designating it HR1, it's one block of property, and they can do that much quicker. Plus, it'll be under R3, it'll be multiple tax bills, multiple water bills. They have no intention of selling this property. It is designated for affordable housing. So that's the reason for my request here, and I've spoken to staff ahead of time on this. So hopefully this you support this one. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any, Councilor Kent, you have your hand up? Okay. All right, are there any further questions or comments on the added amendment?
Councilor Purdy's asking. I think she's waving madly.
Go ahead, Councilor Purdy.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask a question on the 11-meter height. The correspondence we received, their request is to have a maximum height of 14 meters. So I was just wondering why the difference of height in this amendment. I can speak to that, Mr. Chair, if you like.
Certainly.
Yeah, so recall when this did come to council, they their application to receive the funding, the federal funding that we facilitated, they designated townhouses. And the challenge with the way that the HR1 is, it says 14 meters, which is 5 floors. They don't need 5 floors. And I didn't want to allow the residents in the area to perceive that they potentially might get a 5-story building around them. That's not the case. That's not their intent. So I spoke to the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, and they checked with their architect on the designs that initially put in front of us, Councillor, and the 11 meters is all that they need.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any further comment or questions on these proposed amendments to the Center Plan B package?
Just a question to Councillor Austin. Are you bringing in 6 after?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'd like to, once we move this one, just because 6 is kind of warrants its own discussion. I didn't want to get it all mixed up in these.
Okay, all right then.
This is Simon just jumping in, just where we do have, I think, potentially 2 amendments on the floor. We can consider those, I think, friendly if that's convenient, and then label them items 5 and 6 should they pass, and then the further amendment that Councillor Austin is proposing, would it be amenable to council if we were to call that at that time item 7, so that they would follow neatly within, if all pass, the proposed floor motion?
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds,
Yep,
sounds good to keep it nice and orderly. Okay, now for the question on the amended motion to add that to the motion of adding parts 5 and 6 as an amendment to the motion. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So before we vote on the amended motion, we go to now for Councillor Austin's part 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I probably should have moved committee of the whole rules at the start here. I appreciate the leeway.
Always flexible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to move, and so I guess this will be number 7. Initiate a process to develop site-specific CDD development agreement requirements and an associated development agreement for the Southdale Lands Future Growth Node for inclusion in the Regional Center Secondary Municipal Planning Strategy, SMPS, immediately following the completion of Center Plan Package B review and adoption process. Follow the public participation program for the Municipal Planning Strategy amendments as approved by Regional Council on February 27th, 1997.
Second.
Second by Councillor Kent. Explanation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor Kent. The big one it's funny how things go sometimes. The big one in Package B in Dartmouth in many ways is actually the added Southdale Future Growth Node. And when staff first identified, well, you know what, we probably should do this as a future growth node. It's got a giant wetland running through the middle of it. It's got some vacant lands that are kind of upland that are developable on the north side of it, and then it's got some industrial lands that are also, not swamp on the south side of it. And so it's a large chunk of land, probably the single biggest chunk of vacant land in the regional center, but there's never been much interest in it. And but suddenly things change in a hurry. And so we've had a proposal that's come in from Clayton, interested in developing the northern chunk of that land. They have an agreement with the owner, looking to develop that northern chunk of it as residential, that would have potentially some affordable housing, what is being called obtainable housing. So housing within the regional center that's actually it's not necessarily that meets that definition of affordable, but it's obtainable. It's not. It's a price that most families out there could actually afford. So this has all kind of come in rather quickly. And it's the challenge that we have is there hasn't been any community visioning done in that area. So, there wasn't, you look at some of our future growth nodes, Penhorn Mall, Shannon Park, Dartmouth Cove, there's been extensive consultation done in the past to sort out, well, what does future redevelopment of these lands look like? We haven't done that for this land, but we also have an opportunity in front of us. And so what this motion is saying is let's seize that opportunity and let's combine the process of doing the community visioning with a development agreement so that we're not necessarily drawing this out over the course of 5 years, right? Spend two years doing community visioning and then some development agreements from that. We'd like to rather move on this in a hurry instead of having it take a long time. So that's what that motion is for that future growth node, to say let's take the opportunity that's before us and get on with the actually involving the community and doing some planning for that area as soon as the center plan is in place. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to support this, and I'm really pleased that Councillor Austin has put this forward. I was able to represent that area when I was first on council, and it was always an area that that I looked at and thought, wow, what could happen there? I'm kind of disappointed to hear that it really was not fully engaged on during this original process. But I think the time is now. When I think about it too, I think, okay, I'm pleased to hear that a developer like the Clayton Development has the interest in it, and they're also looking at the Penhorn lands, and I think again this is an example of an area within Dartmouth that has not had a lot of. They've had some up there on the top of the hill across from what used to be Penhorn Mall. I still think of it as Penhorn Mall, but there's some areas, pocket areas, like, and I think about Gaston Road, and that could use some vitality in their neighborhoods and really kind of bring some new energy and excitement about their own neighborhoods. So I'm really excited, not only for just this district, but for the really the communities that surround that area. They've got the nice new high school and elementary school down below. So it's really, I think it's, and they're looking at Baker Drive across the street. This is a great, I just hold a lot of a hope for it, and hope that we can move it forward. Having said all that, I'm going to put a caveat in here and say, I'm okay with it, Councillor Austin, as long as it doesn't slow down the suburban planning stage that we need to go through. I'm kidding, but you know what I'm saying. No, I look forward to it, and I'm happy to support it.
All right, any further questions? Are there any further questions?
Question?
Call question on the motion. All those in favor of part 7 as an amendment to the amendment? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carried. So the question on the main motion as amended with 5, 6, 7 added to it. Are there any further questions to it?
Don't we need someone to read it?
I think we'll pass on that. We'll make sure that Sam does that when he goes back to a regional council.
Yeah.
All right.
Question?
Hearing no questions or comment, all those in favor of the amendment motion as presented? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carried. All right. Is there anything else, Councillor Austin, that we need to discuss with the center plan? I don't think Sam is listening.
Oh, I'm here. I was shaking my head, Mr. Chair. That puts that to bed for now.
Okay. All right, let me just check my agenda here. What's next on the slate? We did that. All that motion's been added. Okay, Brando, part 14, motions. Does any members of community council have a motion to be brought forward tonight? Councillor Kent, you have your hand up? Okay. No. Okay, none to be brought forward. No in-camera motion, no in-camera items, no added items. Any notices of motion? Hearing none. Opportunity for public participation. I'm not sure if anyone signed up in time for this. I don't believe so. So we have no one pre-signed up. You need to sign up the day before 4:30 clerk's office to be on the list for public participation. So we'll leave it at that. The date of the next meeting is June 24th. Is there any other business? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn from Councillor Purdy.
So moved.
So moved adjournment. Thank you very much, and good night, everyone, and thank you for everyone for participating and watching out there on Zoom land. This is your Harbour East Marine Drive Community Council signing out. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.